The transfer portal is open again. Has anybody left for TCU football? Who are they targeting? What are the latest on some of the current targets? All that and more coming up here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We're talking transfer portal to start the show. The portal is open again, so there's a window now where TCU is still in the middle of spring practice, but there are some schools that have already completed spring practice. Kids can look at the depth chart and decide they want to move on. Who is TCU going after? We'll start with some updates on some current targets. So Marcus Bryant, tackle for SMU, all ACC, All-American Conference player. Not All-American nationally, but he was an all-conference player in the American Conference for the past couple seasons for the Mustangs. Made multiple starts. He did visit TCU along with his teammate Branson Hickman earlier this spring. It appears he is going to commit to Washington. That is not official yet as of this recording on Wednesday morning, but Chris Hummer from 247 Sports put in a crystal ball for Washington to be the destination. Didn't really hear a lot from Marcus after that TCU visit. Appears that will probably be the case, that he'll go to the Pacific Northwest to join Jed Fitch. I don't know what the connection is there, if there is one. Obviously, they're coming off a really good season, even though they're changing coaching staffs because Kalen DeBoer has moved on to Alabama. But something there intrigued him enough that it appears he's going to make the jump and commit. So at that tackle position, we'll see if TCU tries to fill in that role with somebody else. Right now, you got Mike Nichols, who has made multiple starts over the past few seasons, has dealt with some injuries. I think Ben Taylor Whitfield has also gotten some run there this spring, even though he played a lot of guard last year as a true freshman. He'll be a sophomore this upcoming season coming out of Duncanville. But I think TCU is going to try to add a couple more offensive linemen. Now, Branson Hickman, his teammate who played center for SMU and was, again, an all-conference player in the American Conference this past season, he is still not committed either. I know he visited Arkansas. Not a ton of action from him on social media. When I looked at his Twitter today, it looks like he's taken a sports management class at SMU this semester. He's just been sharing a lot of articles about that, trying to probably fill in some check off some boxes for discussion topics. But anyway, Branson Hickman, his commitment still awaits. We'll see where he ends up. I think that would be a big one if TCU could get it. I'm bummed that they're not going to get Marcus Bryant. I think experience at the tackle position will be a key. They went and got Howard Sampson in the first portal window, but then he ended up decommitting and eventually committing to North Carolina. And my read on that one was that was more of a project anyway. Sampson has amazing size. He's 6'8", but he didn't really play last season in North Texas. So I feel like that was going to be a developmental project that they were just kind of banking on the ceiling being really high and eventually maybe him being a special tackle for them. But obviously I have Bless Harris who will take, that left tackle spot, and then we'll kind of see where they end up at that other position, whether it ends up being Mike Nichols or they bring in somebody else. But I think Branson Hickman could be an important add because he played center at SMU, so you could slide him in there. Colton Deary has been getting the majority of those reps at the center position in spring camp. He played guard last year, so he can do both. But Hickman would give you some position flex in either of those roles. I think he could play in the interior. And the interior offensive line is shaping up to at least be deeper this season with guys like Cade Bennett, who's going to come in from San Diego State later this summer. Deary, Carson Bruno has moved into the interior after playing tackle at Louisiana Tech. And so they have some options there that they can move in and out. But it appears they're going to lose out on Marcus Bryant's commitment, so no help coming in that form from the offensive line right now. Some legislation that could be coming down in the transfer portal. I guess that's not the right word because it's going to come from the NCAA, not like the federal government. But the NCAA, and we've sort of been working with this belief for a while now because in December there were multiple lawsuits. Raekwon Battle from West Virginia, who's a basketball player, he was kind of leading the charge along with his legal counsel. The rule for a while now has been you can transfer one time, penalty-free, if you want to call it that. Basically, you have a one-time transfer where you can leave your current school, go somewhere else. You don't have to sit out. There's no eligibility issues. You can just play, no questions asked. Doesn't even have to be, because of a coaching change or anything like that. And then if you transfer it again, you would have to sit out a year, unless there was some sort of extenuating circumstance like a coaching change that would allow the opportunity for the portal window to open for that specific program. And then a lot of players also filed waivers, and the waivers were just kind of decided on a case-by-case basis whether or not they were going to be allowed to play or not. But in typical fashion with the NCAA, as we've seen over the past 5 to 10 years, a lot of folks have figured out if you take them to court, they don't have a ton of legal standing or bearing to have a foothold on. And so oftentimes players were winning these waiver battles if they had to take it that far. And with the battle situation, he basically sued the NCAA in the state of West Virginia, saying that they were keeping him from being able to work and make money because with NIL, now he has the opportunity to capitalize off his name, image, and likeness. So them saying that he couldn't play basketball was affecting the profits that he could earn as a worker in the state of West Virginia. And they ended up winning that court case. The judge put a temporary restraining order in place, allowing him to play, allowing all athletes in the spring and summer sports to play immediately. And so now the NCAA has a council that is meeting, and it's expected that they will approve just transfers for anybody. So you can't transfer twice in the same sports season, but no matter how many times you transferred, you still should have immediate eligibility with the exceptions of a few different things. So, I mean, we're already sort of there, but we are moving more and more towards free agency in college sports. And that's just going to be, the new wave and the new expectation moving forward. So that ruling is going to come down soon. I don't know how much effect that'll have specifically on TCU, but that's just something to watch. We're moving towards a world where unlimited transfers are a thing. As far as TCU goes, nobody entered the portal yesterday. So, hey, I mean, take that as a win. I don't know how much it tells you. I think part of that is spring practice is still going on, but I don't expect that to stop everybody. I think we're going to see some guys transfer this spring. Now, the question is going to be how impactful are the players that are going to be moving on. And for one thing, like with all the players that they brought in the first portal window, especially in the secondary, and I think at the receiver position too, there are going to be some guys that naturally just kind of look at the depth chart and say, you know what, I feel like it's going to be best if I move on. There will also be players that just frankly the coaching staff says, hey, I think it would be best if you got an opportunity elsewhere because there's just not really necessarily a spot for you to play at the moment right now at TCU. And so that happens too. So I think there will be some movement. But as of right now, nobody in the portal. I mean, there were schools. Colorado had 11 guys at the portal yesterday, Cormani McClain being one of them. Now, the way Deion runs his program and just the way they do things, I think there's always going to be a lot of turnover, in part because part of that's by design. Like, he wants to have turnover. I don't think he wanted to lose Cormani McClain, but he was one of the 11 players that decided to move on or at least explore his options in the transfer portal. But to this point, TCU with 0 transfers. So we'll see, it's not going to stay that way, but we'll see how many guys end up actually moving on as the process plays out here. Another player I wanted to mention, the running back position has been one that we've talked about a lot. Are they going to add somebody? Because there's a bunch of inexperience. Cam Cook didn't get a lot of opportunities last year. He appears to be your lead back right now. Trey Sanders behind him, battle injuries through his career. And is still trying to work his way back to full health. Maybe could be a good short yardage option. Trent Battle has gotten some opportunities in the past. We'll see how much that changes this upcoming year. And then you got some young guys, Jeremy Payne and Nate Palmer, true freshmen who are coming in. One name that hit the portal yesterday that caught my eye just because of the connection, Isaiah Augustive. So Jimmy Smith, TCU running backs coach, came over from Arkansas after Anthony Jones went to USC late in the offseason. So he recruited Isaiah. Isaiah is originally from Naples, Florida. He was a 3-star player out of high school. Didn't get a ton of carries last year as a true freshman at Arkansas. But, I mean, when he got chances, he was really impressive. Last season had 35 carries for 202 yards and a touchdown, almost averaged 6 yards a carry. Was the SEC co-freshman of the week in November after having a 14-carry game where he had 101 yards against Florida International. Also had 15 carries for 80 yards against Mizzou, who ended up being a top 10 ranked team. Now, that was a laugher of a game. It was 48-14. They lost that ball game. So I don't know if all that came late in the game when things were kind of already in hand. But a really impressive performance against FIU. Did some nice things against Mizzou this year. Played 4 games, so I'm assuming he preserved his red shirt. But Augusta, as far as running backs that are going to be in the portal, I think this one would make sense. One, because of that connection. Jimmy Smith knows him, trusts him, probably knows what kind of back he is. But also, I don't think TCU is going to, and I'm not sure they should, go spend resources on a lead back 20 carry type of game guy. Damian Martinez, Oregon State running back, he hit the portal yesterday. He's going to be a huge commodity, and somebody's probably going to pay him big money to come play. But for one thing, I think the running back position is important. I do wonder how much coaches look at it in a similar way to NFL organizations. Yes, you need a running back, but there's a lot of different guys that you can get that can be effective. And now with so many teams that kind of run it by committee, unless you just have a truly special player back there, can you get 150 yards a game with the combination of 2 backs and your quarterback and all that? But if Augusta came in, young player, a lot of promise, could compete with Cam Cook in camp, and then you sort of see what else your other young guys bring to the table. But Sanders and Battle could still be good change of pace players. And I feel like that type of running back would make sense. A guy who's young, who has multiple years of eligibility left, wouldn't be a guaranteed starter walking in the door, would have that chance if he was impressive to eventually take that job, because there's no one right now that I think just has a clear path to it. So that's a name to watch. Isaiah Augusta, impressive true freshman year, has that connection with TCU running backs coach Jimmy Smith, and I think is in kind of the right place in his career to make that type of move to a running back room that needs more proven players, more experience. And, I'm not sure what his goals are. I'm sure he would love to be guaranteed a starting spot somewhere, even with some of the promise he's shown in the SEC. I don't know if he can immediately day one just go anywhere and say that. But just a name to watch. Isaiah Augusta, Arkansas running back, hit the transfer portal, maybe a possibility for TCU. Would make sense if he ended up in purple and got an opportunity to play again with running backs coach Jimmy Smith and had a chance to compete for that starting job. When we come back, TCU baseball. My goodness, rough day in Abilene. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Super excited about one of our new sponsors, Monopoly Go. If you have the urge to compete, to have a new game on your phone, to do something during your kid's soccer practice, whatever the case may be, you should download Monopoly Go. Or perfect opportunity during halftime. We've all been there, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime, scoreboard's not looking too good. You're feeling low. You're not sure your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game. Why don't you make yourself feel better by pulling off some bank heist and taking as much of your friends' money as you possibly can? That's right. The smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress with your buddies. There's so much to do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. You can make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players for rent on your iconic properties. Work with your friends to crack open community chests and in-tournament rewards to climb the leaderboard. So get out there. Put on your game face and download Monopoly Go. It's free on the App Store or Google Play. Next time you need to kill some time, why not have some fun doing it? Download Monopoly Go. Do it today. Sorry to the YouTube audience. If you'll forgive me, I need to plug in my computer here. So went off screen for a second. But thanks for rocking with me here on Locked On Horned Frogs. Let's talk some TCU baseball. We talked portal in the first segment. So Frogs traveled to Abilene last night, playing a midweek game. I typically try not to get too high or too low, no matter what happens in a Tuesday night contest, because, ultimately baseball is decided with weekend series. But I do think these games are more important for TCU these last few weeks and months because you're fighting for your postseason life. You're 7-11 in conference play. And up until last week, they had been perfect in these midweek games. They got beat by UTA. And then last night they travel to Abilene to play Abilene Christian. Carson Bowen has a single in the first inning, steals a base, ends up getting stranded, which was the theme of the night. And then Braden Sloan hits the mound. And, early in the season, when the TCU rotation was struggling, Braden Sloan was one of those guys that was pitching well. He started the year in the bullpen, did a nice job in a couple of relief appearances. And then, as has been the case for the last few seasons, especially for TCU baseball, things weren't really working out with starting rotation. And so suddenly he was kind of thrust into the Sunday afternoon role because Zach Morris was getting hit pretty good in those, rubber games or deciding games of the series. And he struggled. And he continued to struggle, and so they pulled him out of that role. They've kind of let him bounce around. He gets a midweek opportunity against ACU, and the wheels just completely fell off in Abilene last night as the Frogs gave up 7 runs in the first inning. I don't think Sloan was responsible for all of those, but he was responsible for four earned, 5 runs total, 2 walks, 2 hits, did not retire a batter. So not the best line, right? Like just a rough game. Zach Morris came in, gave up a few more runs, and by the end of the first inning, TCU was down 7-0 to Abilene Christian, which is not good. But, sometimes in these Tuesday games, teams will get down big, usually not 7-0, but there have been times where TCU will give up a 4 spot or a 5 spot in the first couple innings because you got typically young pitchers out there. Braden Sloan is a little more experienced than your typical Tuesday starter. Not sure what to do with him. I mean, that was just a bad start. And I don't know if you move him back to the bullpen and hope that works again. But the shuffle has not worked with Braden, unfortunately. He's having a rough time. But the thing about TCU right now is, the pitching last night wasn't great, even though after that 7-run first inning, they settled in and they only gave up 1 more run the rest of the game. So they fought through it, and they gave the team at least an opportunity to scratch their way back in it and make it a ball game. But here's the issue with this team right now. The pitching has been inconsistent. They went to Cincinnati. They got roughed up pretty good. They did a lot better against Texas Tech. They can't hit. That's the big problem. This lineup is bad right now. Nobody's hitting the ball. They leave men on base. They can't rally and score runs. Last night, Anthony Silva had a 2-run single to make it 7-2. And then in the next half inning, I believe at the top of the 5th, they loaded the bases, nobody out. They scratched a run across. So bases loaded, nobody out. The score 7-3. Even if you're just able to hit a couple sac flies, it's suddenly a 7-5 ball game. If you get a base hit or walk or keep that line moving, suddenly you could be right back in the ball game or possibly tie it up. Fisher Ingersoll strikes out. Peyton Chantier comes in and strikes out. And then Ryder Robinson had a good at bat, worked a 3-2 count, but ends up grounding out to first base, I believe. And that was the end of the inning. And that was really the last time the team threatened. I mean, they put guys on base a couple more times during the ball game, but could not find a way to scratch across runs. Your last let's just go back to after that Houston sweep. So they scored 14 runs against Houston on March 28th. Then they scored 6 runs on Houston the next 2 games. That Sunday game or that Saturday game where they scored 6 runs on Easter weekend, they had 2 hits. They benefited from a horrible game from Houston defensively. But still, they scored 6 runs. Okay, so in that series, total, they put together 26 runs. Since then, a loss to UTA by a score of 4-6 against Cincinnati. Lost 4-2, 6-2, 13-2. Scratched out 6 runs against Cincinnati in a weekend series. The Rio Grande Valley midweek series was canceled. They go on to play Texas Tech, lose 7-1, and then they won 2 games, but they still only scored 4 runs. They only scored 9 runs this weekend. They scored 3 runs against Abilene Christian last night in a bullpen game for ACU. ACU was just throwing anybody and everybody out there. It's a type of game where you should be able to get right and get your lineup moving. Could not do it. And that's the biggest issue right now. Like, they're going to Texas this weekend. the other thing about the Big 12, it's just not a very good conference this year. Texas is not a juggernaut of a team. They just got destroyed by UT Rio Grande Valley last night. But my goodness, like, I don't have a ton of confidence that they're going to figure this out and start hitting the ball against UT. Now, could they somehow get a series win? I guess, if they're able to pitch well, but they're putting so much pressure on this pitching staff on a day in and day out basis, and it's not an amazing pitching staff. Like, it's a pitching staff that's had inconsistency issues of their own. So, yes, it was a blown tire on a Tuesday night. But, man, this team is struggling right now. And it's a time where you can't drop Tuesday games because you're fighting for your postseason life. It's just frustrating. It's a frustrating part of the season. You try to bounce back, get after it this weekend against Texas. But rough night for the Frogs against Abilene Christian on Tuesday, losing that ball game 8-3. When we come back, we'll wrap it up with some audience reaction. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I love talking about new sponsors. Another one, Yahoo Finance. Behind every great investor is Yahoo Finance. Use Yahoo for everything. It's one of the major search engines. They're involved in business all over the place. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. Let's get straight to the point. If you want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising cost of inflation, to pay off your debt or your mortgage, pretty much anything standing in the way of you and your financial freedom, Yahoo Finance can get access to the news, data, and tools you need in order to help reach financial freedom. As you can see, by the way, I struggled over the word portfolio. I'm not exactly a high roller, but I know that many of you, since you went to TCU, you probably are. And you probably got investments. You got things you need to manage. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or one looking for extra guidance, Yahoo Finance has all the tools and data you need in one place. They are the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analysis rating, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Yahoo Finance, behind every great investor, is Yahoo Finance. Try out their services. Do it today. Yesterday, I talked about the most important game on the schedule for TCU football. What's it going to be? I mentioned that UCF game to start conference play that's sandwiched between the Long Island game and a contest against SMU, and it being important because you want to set the tone in the Big 12. I think UCF's going to be a pretty good team with KJ Jefferson and Gus Malzahn running an offense together, getting it going. And so a couple of you had reactions. Richard Berry says, I think more importantly, the question is, can they execute better in year 3 under Dykes? He also thinks UCF is trying to be a premier program in the conference, and they have the resources to do it. They'll more than likely show up in that game ready to play. So can TCU match that energy and win? Could be a great season indicator if they don't show up. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's just a big game because UCF, as you said, is one of those teams that's trying to become a power broker in this league. I think Gus is a good coach. I feel like they're going to have a good offense with KJ Jefferson, so I feel like it's going to be a good early test for this defense. What does this defense look like with Andy Avalos at the helm? How aggressive can they be? How can they get after it and force turnovers and force pressure? Travis Garnett says he thinks Utah is going to be a huge game. Can the defense find their footing? Can the Frogs be a title contender in the new Big 12? And it also adds intrigue given that Utah is former Mountain West rivals. That's a good one. I mean, it's cool that they're renewing that rivalry with Utah. Those two schools had some battles back in the day. I have a ton of respect for Kyle Whittingham. I think he's a great coach. On the road against the Utes, that's going to be tough. But if they're playing well and they somehow win that game, then yes, that's a team that we're talking about in title contention, right? At least in the Big 12, and probably playing big games down the stretch. And you hope those late season games at home against Oklahoma State, against Arizona, that all of those are really important because you're going to need big wins early in the season. So those games against Central Florida, those games against Kansas, and then your non-conference games, can you take care of business to make sure those late season contests against premier teams in the conference are that they mean something and that they're going to be big games and great environments at Eamon G. Carter. We'll be back again tomorrow. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. We're free and available wherever it is you get your podcast.